how in the world are you going to headline an interim title fight over that one? How are you going to put that beneath an interim title fight? And an interim title fight, once again, that does not feature the #1 contender.
Ilya or Paddy? I mean, the fight not happening. It's Justin or Paddy now. Paddy got to get past Justin. Justin's a tough fight, bro. I don't know. A lot of people sleeping on Justin on the Paddy fight, which just makes me ridiculous.
Well, it looks like UFC 324 is a go, and the announcement of the headliner has left the entire MMA world in absolute shock. Paddy Pimblett is booked to fight Justin Gaethje for the interim lightweight belt, an absolutely unexpected matchup at this juncture. The internet immediately lit up, with fans and analysts alike calling this one of the most unexpected bookings of the year. This card just got a whole lot more interesting, with Paddy jumping into a championship-level fight and Gaethje returning for another shot at gold.
Obviously, you just saw Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett for the interim title. Earlier, Topuria posted, I'm dealing with some personal problems, so I'm not gonna fight the first quarter. So the winner of Gaethje versus Paddy will be the interim title, and then they will face Topuria.
Analysts feel like that this whole interim title booking is an early Christmas present for Ilya Topuria, because Michael Chandler chimed in straight away, stating that if Paddy somehow wins this fight, then Ilya is getting the easiest possible matchup of his career. Chandler reasoned out that the physicality, striking depth, and experience gap between Ilya and Paddy are going to be massive, creating a mismatch extreme enough it would barely look competitive. Many analysts felt similarly and described it as a free title defense for the champ.
We're saying it again, it's a mismatch if he fights Ilya. What kind of a chance do you give Paddy if he gets that Ilya Topuria fight?
It's a good question, because Paddy is better than most will give him credit for. Obviously, I've shared the octagon with him. His presence, his octagon presence was on point. He knew where he needed to be. He was completely okay with getting taken down that first round. He kept great distance, kept me off with the kicks. Topuria being a little bit shorter than me, but great punching power, punches and bunches, and not just the punches when he throws them and they land, but knowing when to throw his combinations, knowing when to not throw his combinations, when to just stalk. And he does a really good job of stalking guys, because most guys are going to be running away from that right hand, that left hook, the uppercut, because obviously, as we saw with Charles Oliveira, as we saw in a lot of Topuria's fights, the man will put out anybody that he's going to fight. I think Paddy would have a good chance to keep it past a round or two, because he's not going to engage, I think, as much as Oliveira did, and we all found out how Oliveira would do if that right hand left hook lands. But ultimately, I think Topuria, it's not as big of a mismatch as most people think, but it's definitely a mismatch, and that's just because we're talking Ilya Topuria. Now, if we were talking...
Luke Thomas added to that and said, people should stop pretending Justin Gaethje is a heavyweight-sized monster just because he hits hard. He claimed that Arman Tsarukyan is the only real challenge to Ilya Topuria's throne, and that the UFC is wasting time with unnecessary matchups, emphasizing that Arman has the wrestling base, pace, and composure to push Ilya into deep waters. As he himself said, Gaethje versus Paddy is entertaining, but it doesn't solve the real championship question.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is by far the best performance of Arman Tsarukyan's career. We hadn't seen him since April of 2024. We were supposed to see him at the beginning of this year. It all fell apart. I don't know what happened. Back injury, bad weight cut, whatever the actual reason was, I don't know. What I do know is that guy who you just saw there at 155 pounds, and that means I'm excluding Islam from this conversation for the present moment, that is by far Ilya Topuria's toughest test.
Everything seems to fall into place just the way Ilya Topuria wanted, as he had already hinted online that Paddy should fight Justin Gaethje if he wants a shortcut to a title shot. Ilya publicly encouraged the matchup weeks ago, almost as if he knew the UFC would take the bait. With the fight now official, fans are pointing out just how conveniently everything has shifted in the division to favor Ilya, as if he predicted the whole setup.
So if he wants to assure his title shot, he has to fight with Justin Gaethje, because if he fights with Arman, I think that Arman's gonna beat him. So the easiest path he has right now to get the title shot is Justin,
Okay, thank you.
stylistically.
First, Dana White announced that Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker's winner would be up next for Ilia Topuria, which at the time made a lot of sense. Arman was already ranked high and building momentum, but suddenly, with the emergence of an interim title fight between Paddy and Gaethje, that promise began to blur. Observers believe the UFC changed course because of marketability, something that left Arman and Hooker in confusion over their actual path toward the championship.
Dana, earlier this week, you scheduled Arman Tsarukyan to fight Dan Hooker in November.
Yeah.
And will the winner of that fight become the #1 contender in the lightweight division?
Will the number of that? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Dana.
Initially, Ilia Topuria was supposed to fight in January, but he posted a tweet saying he would be out for personal reasons, which meant the division wouldn't have a defending champion for some time. This did give an opening for the UFC to introduce an interim belt that would do better, keeping the top guys active. However, fans were shocked because the tweet came from nowhere. Ilia didn't say anything, which sparked speculation that he might be dealing with injuries, negotiations, or personal commitments. The whole decision by the UFC sparked outrage online, and Ariel Helwani was the first major voice to criticize the matchmaking. How could the UFC possibly justify booking an interim title fight without the inclusion of the #1 contender, Arman Tsarukyan? Ariel said he couldn't understand why the UFC went out of its way to bypass Arman, mainly after Dana had repeatedly mentioned that Arman was next in line. His frustration mirrored the same thought many fans had been thinking.
How in the world are you going to headline an interim title fight over that one? How are you going to put that beneath an interim title fight? And an interim title fight, once again, that does not feature the #1 contender.
Ariel doubled down, saying that the interim belt was unnecessary in the first place. He said the UFC should have just made Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan the official next title fight instead of creating a shortcut for Paddy. He expressed how he thinks unnecessary belts cause confusion, and the situation feels like a perfect example of promotional favoritism. There was already a clear contender, and the UFC chose to ignore it, according to him.
Ilia won that belt back in June. I don't even think you need an interim title fight. Honestly, it should have been the co-main event, 5-round, #1 contender fight, Ilia versus Arman, second half of the year. What's the problem with that? And now what you just said, because he reiterated this in the Instagram Live, the winner of this fight is going to fight Ilia. What happens to Arman? Arman's going to have to fight who? What is going on? What does Arman Tsarukyan have to do to get a shot at the belt now? I know he had the fight back in January. He got hurt. Sue the guy. He sat patiently. He went out there. He steamrolled right through Dan Hooker. He did exactly what he had to do. He did what Khamzat and Islam did not do. He finished his opponent on the ground in dominant, impressive fashion. And now what is he? Now he's just floating in the wind. And he's not even next, apparently.
Arman Tsarukyan himself voiced frustration on social media. His tweet was succinct and incisive, directly questioning the logic of the decision in excluding the #1 ranked contender from an interim title fight. While he did not use emotive language, the meaning was crystal clear. He felt disrespected and sidestepped by the decision-making of the promotion. Fans immediately rallied to his side, saying Arman had earned his position and should not be denied any championship opportunities. MMA Guru then joined in, claiming Arman's dominant performance against Dan Hooker should have served as undeniable proof that he deserved a shot at the title. He went on to say that the pressure, grappling control, and improved striking from Arman proved he was ready for the elite of the division. Guru felt that overlooking a performance like that is irresponsible matchmaking, and that is another case of the UFC favoring popularity over merit.
Arman Tsarukyan destroys Dan Hooker. There is no option but this. Don't chuck at me a Paddy Pimblett name or a Justin Gaethje or he's got to do one more. I was all in favor of making Arman Tsarukyan take a fight when he had been out for a year and a half doing absolutely nothing to earn his title shot. But when you come back and you destroy Dan Hooker, a top contender that even though hasn't really beaten many elite opponents and has lost to a lot of them, is a really tough guy to make look that easy. You absolutely earn your title shot. So Arman Tsarukyan has got to fight Ilia Topuria. No more funny business.
Daniel Cormier added another layer, stating that even if Arman's record wasn't taken into consideration, his skill set alone already qualifies him for a title fight. Cormier pointed out that Arman is one of the very few lightweights capable of pushing the pace for 5 rounds, mixing wrestling and striking with ease, and able to make mid-fight adjustments. DC emphasized that Arman has those championship qualities that can't be denied, and that the situation just feels like the division is being reshaped based on names that move the market rather than who deserves it.
I love Arman. I think he's the man. I think he is the just number 1 contender, and I think he should have the opportunity to fight for the belt. He has earned it. He has earned that more than Paddy has. He has earned that more than Justin had.
Khamzat Chimaev also chipped in, reminding fans he had already predicted Ilya versus Arman and had picked Arman to destroy the champion. Khamzat expressed confidence that Arman's pressure and grappling would overwhelm Ilya, making the matchup extremely dangerous for the current featherweight king. His support adds extra fire because Khamzat rarely comments on lightweight matchups, and if he does, fans take it seriously. Arman had also stressed earlier that he would be fully healthy and available for the January fight, and that he was willing to step in on short notice if needed. The Georgian athlete emphasized that he wanted to stay active and earn his shot the right way, which contrasted sharply with the UFC's decision and led many fans to question why the promotion didn't reward his discipline and readiness by giving him the title opportunity he'd already worked for.
If Ilya's next fight is still up in the air by that point and it happens to be in January, would you be willing to step in and fight on such a short notice for the title?
Yeah, of course. When I beat Dan Hooker and not get any injured, of course I'm gonna take that fight, because this is title fight, and as I know now, you cannot turn down the title fight, so you gotta get there and get your opportunity and fight for the title, because you can fight maybe once in your life for the title.
That was the logical direction many thought, but the UFC made its choice, and Michael Bisping reacted by breaking down the Paddy versus Gaethje matchup. He predicted that Paddy may look to mirror the blueprint Max Holloway laid out in famously beating Gaethje in the BMF fight. Still, Bisping labeled the fight a 50-50 matchup because Justin's power and chaos can flip any fight instantly, while Paddy's durability and movement create unpredictable exchanges.
It is an easier matchup. Will Paddy be able to take him down? Will he dance around the octagon? Yes, he will. Will he try and replicate the game plan of Max Holloway? Of course he will. Who wouldn't try and do that? You aren't going to stand and go toe-to-toe with Justin Gaethje, because the man does have knockout power. But underestimate Paddy at your peril. That's all I'll say about that one, but that is a phenomenal fight.
MMA Guru was way more straightforward and didn't mince words at all. He openly shared that Paddy Pimblett's style, speed, and awkward rhythm might give Justin more problems than people expect from Paddy.
Justin Gaethje, Paddy Pimblett. I reckon Pimblett's going to win. He keeps at very good range. Very good range, keeps his distance a lot, doesn't get caught up in the pocket too much, throws in volume when he does throw a lot of the time with his 1-2, 1-2, and then a jump knee, and a lot of dynamic things that can get the better of Gaethje. Plus, he's going to mix in the takedowns. And Gaethje's getting up there in his career. He's just going through more and more wars, more and more scraps, a ton of time off. Pimblett coming into his prime, has been in shape for a while for this matchup as well.
Max Holloway joined in, claiming that a lot of fans are sleeping on Justin Gaethje just because they're focusing on his recent losses and forgetting about his full career. Max reminded everyone that Justin has far more experience, far more high-level battles, and far more 5-round wars than Paddy. He emphasized that counting out Gaethje just because of a few bad moments is a huge mistake, and this fight is far more competitive than people think.
Ilya or Paddy? I mean, the fight not happening. It's Justin or Paddy now. Paddy got to get past Justin. Justin's a tough fight, bro. I don't know. A lot of people sleeping on Justin on the Paddy fight, which just makes me ridiculous.
This division keeps heating up, and UFC 324 may prove to be the starting point for one of the most chaotic title chases the UFC has ever witnessed. With Ilya on the sidelines, Arman angry, Paddy on the rise, and Gaethje coming back for gold, the table is set for a clash that will define the entire future of the division. So stay tuned, folks, this is far from over. If you're enjoying these breakdowns and want every major UFC update delivered fast and accurate, hit subscribe and stay locked in.